our computer. And I want to say welcome to everyone. It is October the 1st, the start of a new month, the start of a new quarter. And we are talking today about one of my favorite topics, pivoting to virtual events. So I want to say a big welcome to my co-host, Michelle Mullins. Good morning to you, Michelle. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm doing fabulous. Excited to start the day. I was just saying, I wish we could start every day like this because by 10:30, I feel like I've accomplished so much already. So
Well,
great,
whether
great.
it's morning or evening, wherever you are listening into us, welcome. And we have a great call today, very special guest. We've got our episode 22 guest, Kristin Winkle-Beck. So good morning to you, Kristin. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm absolutely honored to be here and can't wait for a great discussion this morning.
Yeah, well, it's a good one. It's a very relevant, apropos as we step into Q4 of 2020, pivoting to virtual events. So Michelle gets to take us through this week's warm-up. Over to you, Michelle.
Oh, Jen, will you please lead the way? My brain is not awake enough for story cubes this morning. Do you have the story cubes?
I have a couple sets of story cubes actually over here. So we are going to do a little exercise called story cubes. I'm using actually a deck created. It's under the banner of Rory's story cubes, just to acknowledge that. And I've just got two of them today. So Rory has created some amazing decks. They're just die or dice. And today, let's see, we are using the Clues deck, C-L-U-E-S. So I'm going to roll these, I'm going to show them, and then I'm going to give us 30 seconds to just create a little story for ourselves. So the first one is a siren, S-I-R-E-N, a siren.
A siren.
Siren, yes. And the second one is a heart. So as we step into the month of October, siren and heart, I'm going to give you 30 seconds just to make up your own little sound bite around the siren and the heart, and then we will check in around what that means for you. Take a moment to think about it. All right, well, that's about 30 seconds. A quick one today. So, Michelle, I always get to go to you first. What emerged for you with the siren and the heart?
I said it's like a ringing alarm bell notifying me of how I like to serve others, like moved with compassion, just paying attention to what awakens my heart and move towards that.
Love it.
How about you, Jen?
Kristin, as our special guest today,
Oh.
what got activated for you, Kristin?
You know, my first thought was really to make sure that my heart is tender. And when I think of sirens, I think of warnings and people in pain. Quite honestly, I thought of the emergency management or an ambulance siren. And so just making sure that my heart is tender to, it may not be as bold and as blaring as a siren, but the people that I work with and the people that I serve and even my own family and friends, just make sure that I'm listening, even if the siren is subtle, that they might be in pain, and to be more aware where others are hurting and where I might be able to offer more grace or more support.
That's wonderful.
Beautiful.
It is. It really
Love
is.
that.
We've got a few others on the call. Melissa, Jennifer, I don't know if either one of you would like to share with us as well. What came up for you this morning?
Sure, this is Jennifer G. And very similar to Michelle and to Kristin, I heard heart cry, you know, because like the siren cries out. And so I thought about my clients and my friends and my family and what is the cry of their heart this quarter, as well as my own, you know, and how can I serve others by kind of tuning in and listening to the cry of their heart. What are they longing for in this season?
Beautiful.
Phenomenal.
Love the hearts on this call. It's awesome.
There are, and I saw Melissa, you were leaning in as well. Do you want to add in your voice on this?
Sure. Wow, that's really cool, like what you just did. But I too, it's showing up powerfully. As I show up powerfully with my whole self, which is, your heart has to be in what you do, and so the I believe that things move forward. And so with the sirens, that was a little bit of a, what does this mean? But what I'm feeling is that there's a sense of urgency in our message today, that we need to show up, because it is time to show up. Like, there are many needs out there, and if we don't get our message out powerfully, we're not doing what we're called to do. So that's sort of the sirens around that, and it's all going to be different for each of us.
Love it. Love it. Well, I'll add my little layer on as well, which, the sirens to me meant like a calling, similar to what many of you have talked about. And then the heart to me also represented connection, which I think really segues us back into today's topic of pivoting to virtual, right? I said this back in March, just as the pandemic was starting. We had no idea how long our physical distancing, our social distancing would last. But I said, this is where, for those that are coaches or people who bring people together, like, our work is even more important. And look at where we are now. Certainly here in Toronto, we may be locking down again, not unexpected, but it's just, to think of another few months of being really isolated in the heart of winter. So that's scary. And so how do we use this platform of virtual to bring people together, to be in conversation at whatever size? It doesn't have to be huge, right? Like, I think people just want to know that they are connected with others. So with that, whether you're here with us live or virtually today, thank you. Connect in with our community. It's one of the reasons that Michelle and I started doing these last year as we launched the podcast. So that is our start. And we are now in Q4, which, from the business philosophy of PlanDoTrack, we've looked this year at focus. We've looked at experimentation. We've looked at motivation. And we chose that this quarter would be all about reflection. So Michelle, PDT, PlanDoTrack, reflection, what's important for you to embrace as you step into Q4?
Yeah, I have to say, this is, besides spring, right? Besides, reflection is my favorite. I'm just a natural reflector. So this kind of gives me permission to go in that heart space, set time apart, and reflect upon what happened this year and what's ahead. So love reflection. Great quarter.
So whatever you are wanting to create this quarter, we'll invite you right now just to take a note, maybe beside your siren and your heart. What is your theme for Q4? Is it reflection? Is it something else? Just take 10 seconds to claim your theme.
Oh, I heard, Jen, like maybe yours came out, that 90 days of serving others virtually. Just being aware that you could go back down into that isolation. So how could we be proactive and serve others during this time?
And serve others. And as Michelle just said, one of my commitments is to actually bring video voice to some writing work that I'm doing around remotepreneurs. So I'll be showing up somewhere in the ecosystem, not sure where, but somewhere in the ecosystem for the next 90 days for remote professionals who want to get their message out, for specifically remotepreneurs. So with that, today though, we are talking pivoting to virtual. And last time, if you weren't with us, we talked co-working structures. Michelle and I had actually a great conversation around, I think it was 9 different ways that you can co-work virtually. And so if you haven't caught up on that episode, again, head on over to YouTube, look for Remote Pathways podcast. It's over on my YouTube channel, so Jennifer J. Britton. And this month, we are now shifting gears to meet with Kristin Winkle-Beck, who really gave voice to pivoting to virtual events. Now, Michelle, you picked this graphic, so walk us through what this represents for you.
Okay, so who on the call remembers Friends pivot episode? That remains to this day one of my favorite things.
I love that.
Yes. It's having a hard day. Yes, so give it voice, Genji, right? That it's Ross trying to
It's
move.
Ross.
Yeah, it's this hard space, right? They're trying to get through this hallway. They've got this giant couch, and he's like so frustrated, and he just keeps calling out, "Pivot, pivot," and nothing's happening. And if you watch this at a later time, look this up. It will make your day bright. So that was a good opening.
I love hearing, like, so I haven't seen it myself. These were my years of working globally with no TV. Pivot, right? Like I'm hearing it's hard. We want to make it work. We want to make it fit, but it doesn't necessarily work. And we just keep going, right? Like look at those 4 little iterations on the screen. So we're hoping that today's conversation is going to maybe spark some new possibilities, some new options, as well as hear from our guest, Kristin Winkle-Beck, around her pivot in the virtual space. And if you haven't listened yet to episode 22, it's actually going to be released next week. And we will talk a little bit more about it. So first, maybe let's meet Kristin. Michelle and I pulled together a quick download that we will talk to. But Kristin, we'd love to hear your soundbite story because we haven't met you yet in episode 22. So tell us about your pivot and what happened in your world this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things. Pivot is a really special word to me long before the pandemic made it, mainstream. I have to go back to when I actually pivoted out of my career in corporate America in 2017. And so it was, this word represents an abrupt shift for me into the world of executive coaching. And then it was about this time last year that I pivoted again, keeping my coaching practice, but I pivoted into leading a nonprofit organization. And so this word has meant a whole lot. In fact, my coaching business is actually called Pivot Point Professionals. And I have a t-shirt that says pivot. Because it's just that it's been that core to who I am. But one of our, and the nonprofit that I lead is called Social Venture Partners Charlotte. And this year one of the biggest events where we spotlight innovation for nonprofits, it's actually a storytelling or a pitch competition, was set to be held on March 31st. And on March the 11th, we started to realize it probably wasn't going to go according to plan. And so this event, it's an annual event. It had been held 9 years. It was my first year leading the organization with this signature event that our community has come to expect and love. And so it was a really challenging time, especially because I think pivoting implies that you know where you're going, and that you have a direction and that you're just going to make the change. And our decision-making process was a little bit more like this couch, where it was a little bit awkward at times. We ultimately did make the pivot to a virtual event, and it was successful, but it was a challenge, and it took a lot of teamwork, much like the graphic. It took a lot of intentionality. It took a lot of flexibility, and it really took a lot of planning and collaboration to make it happen.
That's phenomenal. And again, like some of those sound bites that you've just shared with us that are really connected in with what we've been talking about this year, the collaboration, the innovation, the teamwork, intentionality, even if you're not quite sure where you're going, but like we do need that end result in mind. So I'm curious, Kristin, what were some of the big lessons learned as you pivoted successfully? Because obviously here we are months later, and you've got a smile on your face as you reflect on this. So what were some of those big lessons learned that helped you through that tremendous change?
I think one of the things is when you're in the midst, and this felt a bit like decision-making in crisis because our world was shifting literally hour by hour as different government agencies restricted our ability to gather socially, and because this program involves, almost 100 community volunteers and 20 nonprofits that had been working 3 months for this event, I would say the first thing that we really did was kind of step back and look at our stakeholders and understanding who was going to be affected by whatever decisions that we made. That was really important, have a clear understanding of who's going to be affected by these decisions. And as you look to modify the format of the event, how is it going to be perceived and impact each of those different groups, because it was different. And we tried to be very thoughtful and think through that carefully. The second thing was we pre-decided as many things as we could. So as a form of communication protocol, as a form of decision making and leadership cadence through the pivot, we really talked about what would we need to do and what were some decisions we could make up front that could be repeatable cadence, so that we weren't constantly redeciding some things. We decided really early on our communication flow and how information as decisions were made, how communication would flow. And that never really wavered throughout our process, which also meant that when a new decision was made, we knew what to do because we'd already pre-decided. And then the final thing, I think, is just understanding that you cannot necessarily replicate a format that has been tried and true in a virtual space. We had to make some hard decisions. We decided to eliminate judges. We gave away nearly $40,000 this year. And typically, some of those monies would be decided by the audience, sort of a virtual, in the auditorium, text your vote in to the winner. We decided this year, because of virtual, people would be watching the recording instead of watching it live. We expanded our viewing and voting window to 48 hours. Normally, it's like a 10-minute window where everybody in the audience votes for their favorite. So we had to make that adjustment. We also had to shrink and condense the content, because normally the show has live entertainment, has a whole bunch of other components when we're in the auditorium, and it's about 90 minutes in format. And we just felt, before the term Zoom fatigue had set in, we just felt people's attention for that length of time maybe wouldn't be there. So we made the hard choice to streamline some parts of our normal program, make the event shorter, more concise, and to appeal, again, thinking about our audience, thinking about their comfort, their attention span, what would be interesting for them. And we made some modifications. So we didn't just try to replicate what we do in person. We really were thoughtful about what's core to the program. We don't want to, hurt that, but what are some other things that maybe we need to adjust when we take this thing virtual?
Love it. Love it. And as an author and a researcher, right? My 2017 book, Effective Virtual Conversations, everything that you've spoken to is, like we saw in the research years ago. Now we have 3 billion people seeing this and experiencing this, blowing up some of the myths that we've held. I'm going to bring Michelle's voice in here because, like Michelle, I'm sure you heard things, but Kristin, what really struck me was that word of intentionality and planning. We can't wing it in the virtual space like we can in the moment, yet we want to co-create. So really, in order to create in the moment, we need to have the structure and the systems that you talked to that gives us the space to be able to really, design and create that wow experience, whether it's synchronous live or it's asynchronous virtual, but within that, as you said, like a 48-hour window. It's still important for us to show up. And I think a lot of professionals today are like, oh, no one's here. But you know what, if you're recording something and sharing it digitally, people will be there. And so how do we include those voices in our processes, in our message, in our communication? Michelle, what's sparking your ideas today?
I think the leadership of Kristin's heart there, she just, articulated that so beautifully. Your tender heart came alive. I can totally see why you are the pivot point professional, and what a blessing for you to be present in this nonprofit. It's Social Venture Partners Charlotte, right?
Yep.
That you're the executive director for such a time as this. What a gift. And I also heard, yes, you're very strong in the programming because of your corporate background, but you went first with eyes on the people. Who will this impact? And then you designed around that and set yourself up for success, that communication. What can we do to make this an easier, smoother transition? Really thought through that. So I love that you put the people lens on first. So great leadership, Kristin.
Thank you. It was really important to us because we have so many people that just love this. They look forward to this event every year.
Right.
And we had built a brand, and we built, an expectation from, the nonprofits who had been working so hard for 3 months up to this point. I likened it to, the poor athletes that missed the March Madness. They've been working all season, for the tournament, for the big game, for the big show. And so we just were very sensitive we didn't want to cancel. The future was way too uncertain to delay it because we didn't know what we'd be delaying it to. And so we just, fortunately, the other thing I would also say is it's critical to have good technology. And if you're using vendors or suppliers or strategic partners that are delivering on parts of the program for you, choose the best ones you can. And we were so very fortunate to have, an Emmy Award winning video production team that was already working with us. And they just said, no problem, here are all your options. We can do this. And so I think having, knowing where we didn't have the subject matter expertise and calling in the experts to help guide us, they didn't tell us what to do. They led us through the decisions. They presented us with our options. And then we made the decision that was best for our program and for our constituents. And that's another really important lesson to me is, surround yourself with great people and experts in their field and let them shine. Because that will bring to fruition a much better outcome than you could ever achieve in isolation.
Brilliantly said, brilliantly said. And I love how you've, quote unquote, this is a term many of my clients are using right now, like reimagined what it could look like. We're very much in that phase. People I hear rely on that event. They look forward to that event. So how do we ensure that we maintain consistency in an environment that's so fluid, but there's, something that we can reimagine and create of value. This is great. Well, we've got a few others live on the call. We've had a chance to sit down with you, Kristin. I'm wondering, Melissa, Jennifer, any questions for you? Anything you're curious about? Because I'm imagining there are parts that you are reimagining in your work as well. Any questions for Kristin today? Go ahead, John G.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I didn't really have any questions at this time. And I totally just went blank on what I was gonna ask. Go ahead, Jen, and I'll come back.
Yeah, well, I noticed, Melissa, I don't know if you're leaning in to ask a question or make a statement there. Why don't we bring your voice in here while Jen G reconnects?
Oh, okay, sure. You know what? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now. We can.
Okay, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, no, I've just that's just amazing what you've said, Kristin. And I, at a time when there weren't all of these people leading the way to do that pivot. I mean, you were doing it at the same time as others that we've been following now. And so congratulations on making sure that you took action right away, but first, like you said, did the planning and really thought about who it will impact. And I think that's the core of our message is who will it impact and who needs our message. And so and then to surround ourselves with people that can do what we need better, and to work together on this, because there are so many parts. And so I love that the podcasts are coming out, and I love what Michelle and Jennifer started last year with this podcast, because I mean, they're just in the perfect thinking, and the remote professionals is what they're what they've been doing and what they've been seeing. And it's just, you've set yourself up to be one of those leading the way. I'm a relocation specialist in Costa Rica. So what I'm trying to do is, as people come in, have more of a virtual presence, but there's also maybe an opportunity to have more of a on the ground presence now that has come up. And so I want to make sure that I can look at both and see, where's the impact going to be, and how much time in each, and how should this go. So it's, I need a lot of help along the way, basically, when it comes to virtual.
And fun connection, just because, that's exciting for me. Kristin and Melissa were CCI alumni, Christian Coach Institute alumni. And I'm not sure if you've met, but yeah, same foundation, coaching foundation. So I thought that was
Hi, that's really neat. Have to connect for sure. Now your name is looking familiar for sure.
The virtual world is small.
That's right.
Well, I'm gonna just segue into, like, you actually inspired us, Kristin. The other day, Michelle and I sat down to talk about, like, what would we offer listeners as a download? And you've talked today about so many P's, and so Michelle and I were like, okay, like, what are the things that you need to do to pivot to virtual? So we started, like, coming up with this list, which initially was all P's, but then we really moved it to a popping with purpose in the virtual. So we want to invite everyone, when episode 22 comes out next week, you can head on over to remotepathways.com/podcast. Look for this episode where we spotlight Kristin, but you can also download this worksheet. And if you are having to, purpose pivot, really look at, where your events are going. I think it would also work going from in-person to virtual and virtual to in-person. Whenever we're having to pivot, period, we want to think about, like, what's the purpose? What are the outcomes we want? What are the people? So who is it for and who can help us? What's the platform? Is it virtual? Is it Zoom? Is it Teams? Is it some other platform? How about the interactivity? Do we want to have a live conversation like this? Do we want to do breakouts? Do we want to use chat? What are those communication vehicles that we have? And what are the needs and expectations of those we're serving? Finally, in our popping framework, it's like, what are the goals and milestones? Kristin, it sounds like you had like a 3-week window or less to really make this happen. For some of us, it may be a longer pivot to virtual, or a longer pivot perhaps going virtual to in-person. So what is the time frame? What are those goals that are going to help you feel like you're getting some traction and also noticing that you're getting things done? So we hope that this will be of interest. I have to say, I was really tickled pink to have, like, a mnemonic that works. So popping with pivot, like, it's an easy way to remember it and sort of do a checklist. And my guess is, as we are moving into perhaps extended need for virtual in many parts of the world, this might just be a useful mnemonic. So you can tell, and heard it here first.
Love it.
I love that. I mean, I love this. And I think this, honestly, whether you're pivoting or not, this is a great model to plan any kind of event or new framework, and can be applied in many, many cases. But I have to point out specifically that piece about the milestone and the feedback. And that's one part of our story in those 20 days where it was intense, adjusting and shifting, is we were very clear, and we held a couple of listening sessions with our participants, and we reached out to our sponsors, because we had large corporations. Wells Fargo has generously been our presenting sponsor for the 9 years. And so we reached out in the midst, right? Like, as we were making things, we were getting some feedback. And then after we had recovered, because those 20 days were a little intense and I didn't sleep a whole lot, we did do a lessons learned. So we gathered we always do a survey to our audience. So we continued that. We did a survey from our participants, but we also gathered internally and did kind of a lessons learned and a debrief too. So I just cannot underscore the power of feedback. Is important, and it's important where you can get it along the way as well.
Yes.
And don't forget the sort of lesson learned debrief event after the fact. Super powerful.
Love it.
Great reinforcement. That's awesome. Yes. All the time. Not just at the end. All throughout. Bring the voices in. Yeah. Great.
Very much. I think we forget that,
Yeah.
I think we got to wait till the end to gather feedback. And the reality of it is that, especially in a really dynamic situation, or in, where you've got multiple stakeholders who you really need to deliver for, don't assume
Well, you've heard it. Just so we're mindful, I think it is 7:30. So if any of you, we know that your professionals have to hop off now. We want to be respectful of your time, but we are going to spend a couple more minutes here, just because you've met Kristin here on this. Tune into the episode. It comes out next week, next Wednesday, and just glean more. Take time to take note of what she's saying and consider how you can bring that learning forward, and also reach out to Kristin. You like to connect via LinkedIn, right? They can find you at Kristin Winkle-Beck. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Would love the opportunity to get to know you better. And for any of your listeners at a later time, absolutely always love to meet other professionals in the space and would welcome the opportunity.
Fabulous. Thank you, Kristin. And Jen, please lead us down this remote road. How are we going to wrap up today?
We're going to wrap up. Just a reminder, we're on to week 39 of the year. You can also head on over to the Remote Pathways blog, and we are spotlighting coaching questions. The ability to coach, whether you are a full-time coach or just using a coaching approach, becomes even more important in the remote space to activate folks. So head on over for this week's download. Again, remotepathways.com/blog. And our question of the week, Michelle.
This is from Kristin, our episode. What was it, Kristin? Are you working from home or living at work? Such a great question. So let those conversations be sparked around the virtual table.
And we are having lots of conversations. Michelle pulled a quote that I had written back in 2013. Coaching is a conversation with intent. And that truly sums up what coaching is all about. It's about intentionality, it's about direction, it's about input. And that comes from one-to-many best practices for team and group coaching.
Hey, Genji.
Next episode, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we were going to bring Genji. I think she had one more thing. Did you pop off there? We wanted to bring your voice back in.
Oh no, I was just going to say I love that. I love that quote, and the previous slide too. I was just going to say that it was. I love that quote. Are you working from home or living at work? You know, thinking about from a well-being perspective, and working with clients. Michelle, you know, some of the people that we're working with, and just the amount of stress that people are under right now, and that's a really great perspective to take. Working from home or living at work, and how is that affecting your health, you know, your family, your relationships? There's really a lot of conversations I feel like could go from there. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your voice. It's awesome.
Wow. We love about our conversation sparker, right? Lots of different ideas. So next episode, that'll be episode 23. We've got Sharon Koifman of Distant Job. He is the president of Distant Job. He also has a new book coming out. It will be released in November, and he's going to come and talk with us about remote management in the episode. We're not sure if he'll be with us live for the community call, but stay tuned to that new release, episode 22, I believe. And next week, if you're interested, come and stand out virtually with me in my Zoom room. Monday through Friday, I'm going to be doing another 5-day challenge based on the success we had in August. This is a new challenge. I really want to frame it. It's for anyone who wants to stand out better and make more impact in the virtual realm. And that's really been a big topic for us today. It's going to be the corporate edition. So we're going to really specifically laser into how do you really build those connections with organizations that need your voice, need your services, as we've talked about today, need the space for someone to come in and hold that pause so the organization can also have conversations they need. So whether you're working or thinking about working with nonprofits, for-profits, public sector, we're going to talk not only about the foundations of great virtual conversations and facilitation, but also in the corporate lens. So if you're interested in signing up, head on over to standoutvirtually.com, and the links are now correct. With that, next call, Michelle, what's our next call time?
Thursday, October 15th at 7:30. We're going to give you a little bit more time for that coffee to kick in. So we hope you join us. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today on these extra 5 minutes. Thanks for giving us that window of time. And we just say, have a great day of pivoting, and go look up that video of the
And thank you,
episode.
Kristin. Yeah, thank you, Kristin. Appreciate it.
Yes.
A pleasure to be here. This was wonderful.
Thanks for starting your day, everyone, with us, or your afternoon or evening. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, Thursday, October 15th. Be well. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.